For our lesson today, we are going to use our Fritz book, and we're going to remember the story that we listened to, or the recording that we listened to yesterday, and then we're going to read a story today about Fritz and fishing. So remember yesterday we listened to a story about Fritz and Lily going fishing, and the things that they had to do before they could go fishing and while they were fishing and when they caught a fish. Fritz described the steps for catching a fish. First, they had to get worms. They had to dig for worms. They had to get their poles, their fishing poles and their string, and they had to get the worm on the hook because that's what the fish wants to eat. And then they have to put that in the water, so they tossed their lines, their fishing poles into the water. And then you had to wait and be patient for a fish. And when you caught a fish, Lily's flopped away, so she had to use her fist to hold onto it tightly. And then at the very end, the fish was too small to keep, so they toss it back into the water so it can keep growing and get bigger and bigger. So now on page 6 and 7, we have a story that we are going to read about Fritz and Lily fishing. Can you find the title on page 6? It's in the spot where the titles are in our Super Kids books. It's kind of a different spot, right up here. And this story is called Fritz. So use your pointing finger to point to the title and read it with me. Fritz. That's just his name, right? What characters do we see in this story? Remember, the characters are the people or the animals that are doing the things in the story. So who do you see in this story? If we look at both of these pages, just at the pictures, we see Fritz. He's carrying a log. We see Golly, sniffing, of course. And we see Lily. Are there any other characters in this story? No, I don't see any other Super Kids. I think it's just Fritz, Lily, and Golly. And then where is the setting? The setting is where a story is taking place. Settings can be all sorts of different places. So let's see, is this setting in their classroom at school? No. Is this setting at Lily's house playing with her little lion family? No. Is the setting at Golly's gas station where he lives? No. This looks like it's by a pond or a lake or some place with water where you can go fishing. So that would be the setting. Remember, when we read, we start on the left and we go across to the right. Left to right. Can you take your finger and point to Fritz carrying the log, and then slide your finger all the way to the right? This is the direction that we're going to read. So we're going to look at the pictures and the words like this, and then this one, and then this one, and then we have to go back to the left, here, and across. Okay? And then I think the last thing we have to remember is what a rebus is. So in this story, I see a couple of different rebuses. This one, or these are pictures instead of the words, right? So if we get to this picture, are we just gonna skip it, or what do you think we would say? What is this? A worm. So when we get to this picture, we're gonna say worm. And then I see another rebus. Anybody know what this is? It's a can, and it looks like this can used to have fruit in it, but we're gonna find out that it doesn't have fruit in it anymore. So when we get to this picture, we're gonna call it a can. And if we look at some of the other pictures, we see more rebuses, and these are more worms. So when we see these pictures, we're gonna say worm. If you would like a challenge, I know some of my friends really like a challenge. If you'd like a challenge, pause the video right now and read this story to yourself. You can use your whisper voice or your regular reading voice. But if you're feeling like, yes, I can do this, I want to read this by myself, do that right now and then come back to finish the video. If you think that might be too hard, then just read along with me. Fritz. Fritz lifts a log. Golly digs. Lily digs. Lily got a worm. Fritz fills a can. Fritz got a fat worm. Lily got a flat worm. Lily sits still. Fritz sits still. Great job. We're going to read this story a second time now. And while we read, I'm going to ask you to try some of the words, and I'm also going to ask some questions. So as I read this story, I can use what I already know about fishing to help me understand the story better. I know worms live in the ground, and they can be used as bait for catching fish because fish like to eat worms. This helps me understand why Lily and Fritz are digging up worms and putting them in a can. Because otherwise I might think, ew, are they gonna eat those worms? No, they're for the fish to eat so they can catch fish, right? All right, so I would like you to read the title. Fritz. Pause the video and read the first sentence to yourself. All right, let's try it together. Fritz lifts a log. Pause the video and read the next sentence to yourself. The next sentences. Let's read them together. Golly digs. Lily digs. What are they digging for? Worms, that's right. Read the next two sentences to yourself. Let's read them together. Lily got a worm. Fritz fills a can. Now we go down to the bottom, back to the left. Read this sentence to yourself, pause the video, and then come back when you're done. Fritz got a fat worm. So what kind of worm did Fritz get? Ooh, it was a big fat one. Look at that. That's huge. Read the next sentence to yourself, pause the video, and come back when you're done. Let's read it together. Lily got a flat worm. A flat worm? What's a flatworm? So like, let's say, if I have a fat worm, it might look like this. Whew. But if I have a flat worm, let me flatten this one out, it might look like that. So Fritz has a fat worm and Lily has a flat worm. Read the last 2 sentences to yourself. Pause the video and come back when you're done. Let's try it together. Lily sits still. Fritz sits still. What does sitting still mean? Still as a statue, you might have heard before. Still as a statue because they don't want to scare the fish away. All right, now I have some questions to see if you understand what we read in this story. What did Fritz and Lily have to do before they could go fishing? So what did they have to do first? Fritz and Lily had to dig, with Golly's help, for worms, right? And they were going to use those worms to catch fish. So before they could catch fish, they had to dig them out of the ground. How are Fritz and Lily alike at the end of the story? How are they the same? What are they doing that's the same? They're both sitting still and being patient so they don't scare the fish away. Hopefully they'll catch a fish. Would you like to dig for worms and go fishing with Lily and Fritz? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe some people say, ew, worms, gross, I'm not touching them. Maybe some people don't want to sit still because they might find it boring or they might fall asleep. I think I'd like to try going fishing with Fritz and Lily. Maybe once. If I like it, I'd go again. It would be a great idea, friends, if you read this story to yourself again. Maybe not right now. Maybe when you're done with all of your work and you eat lunch or you go play or you do something else. Maybe in the evening, before dinner or after dinner, come back and try reading the story to yourself again. The more times you try and the more times you chop and blend and read the words, the better and better you will get. So even if this story was pretty hard for you to read, keep trying. Maybe just do 1 sentence. And then maybe when you get that one, do 2 sentences. You don't have to read the whole story, but what I really want is everyone practicing reading sentences and understanding them. So try it again and again. Try it tomorrow. You'll get better and better.